how do you see Latin photographers within a contemporary context today? Do you feel like they have more of a chance now, that there's more of our voice kind of coming through?
I think I think with the internet and like the globalization of photography and the fine art world, I think there's a platform to have multiple voices, and the insider voice, which was long neglected, I would like to say. Like, for a long time, people said, this is how we're going to come at of photography and certain subject matters, whether it be poverty, immigrant, minority, whatever. And it was always from like an outsider documentary, or at least like what was highlighted in, I believe, in the art world was like an outsider perspective, kind of objectifying people, not necessarily in a negative connotation, but there was an objectification to these groups. And I know, like, at least through my training and growing up, when I was studying people like Abaddon and Ansel Adams, and even like the history of it, I was like, I don't see myself here. Like, I don't see my story as an insider, and I don't see myself in the history of photography, and that used to like really bum me out and really like puzzle me. And now, like, archiving and people going back and saying like, no, there was this Latin photographer, or there was this movement, or there was this in Mexico or in Colombia or in Spain, stuff like that, that we're more informed. And now, like, as younger contemporary photographers, it kind of gives you like, so this history, there was omission in the history, right? There was all this stuff left out. Now, let me, as this person of being Mexican-American or being from East LA, whatever, let me take my insider voice and really explore and document and create this narrative that is an insider voice. And I think that's a big movement within a lot of photographers, is saying like, I am this person, I am the insider within this certain amount of people, and I want the world to see it. And I think now the platform is open to that, where you had this traditional voice, this authoritative voice, and now it's like, no, here's all these other stories that were left out of the picture. And I see that happening now with photography, that it's opening a lot of doors for people. And at least for me, I feel like with the future of photography, that it's going in the movement of like, it not just this westernized white man perspective, that it will be, Black culture, Latin culture, minority culture, lower class, whatever you want, working class, that there will be all these projects within these people. And it's finally happening, that it's finally shedding lights about these movements.
I mean, it's interesting. It's interesting that you say that, because we talk about photographers like Wayne Lawrence and Alejandro Cartagena, and the idea that now they've amassed so much success and kind of broken through the barriers and are now very mainstream and people know of their work. How important do you think that is to kind of the uprising and getting to the point where there are more Latin voices, more just voices of color in photography?
Well, I think the most interesting thing about them and their work is the recognition, because there's like this whole idea of like, just doing work and doing it for yourself, which is I do that myself, but it's hard when, like, I think it's important to get recognition and to get the work out there and to get achievements and awards in terms of not just to justify the work or anything like that, but to kind of broaden the horizon. Like Wayne Lawrence, right? He's been winning a lot of awards for his work, and it's giving him a bigger audience and a bigger network. And along with Alejandro, like I've noticed like them continuously popping up on like my feed, like, he won this thing, or he was a grand prize winner. And I think it's important because that kind of opens it for all of us and says, like, this work is of importance and needs to be recognized. And like with the history of photographer, there's a lot of photography that's happened that wasn't recognized. And so it's not in the history, but it exists. So it's problematic and it's confusing, but seeing them get success opens up the dialogue, and it makes me really happy because I think both their bodies of work, and not just the bodies of work that are getting published, but them as photographers and what they follow and their narratives and stuff like that is something I look like as inspiration, because I have a certain set of ideas and I follow certain themes, and that's probably what my work is going to be for the rest of my life, is following these certain set ideas and notion. And so to say like, yeah, that person's ideas are interesting and they need to be recognized, like it's something I look forward to hopefully in the future, and that I commend them on. And I think it also it makes marginalized people feel like we exist too, like, wow, like this photographer, this Latin photographer is existing on the top platforms of the art world.
I feel like there's a movement slowly happening where you're seeing a new kind of generation and a new crop of not only Latin photographers, but just photographers of color kind of taking authorship of their story again.
Yeah.
You know, really owning their story. I feel like for so long there's so many outsiders were openly kind of taking authorship of our narrative, and I think there's a movement now happening where we're kind of slowly taking it back, and it's not to sound aggressive, if you will, but it's to kind of say, do you know what I mean? Like,
well, I don't know if it's taking it back. I just necessarily think, like, in terms of like how I go about it, like, okay, that was your mind frame and that's how you captured the story. Now this is how I captured the story.
No.
And you're coming from with an agenda and a point of view that will never be mine and might not ever be an insider's view. And your work is valid, but it's one voice, and like, and the artist world is many voices. And so I think there is that idea of like, I am an insider into a certain genre, like let's just say East LA, or being like Mexican American. And I do want to take authorship, because it's like, that's the only part of the story when people who are just invested in a single idea come in and extract. Like, I grew up in East LA. There was a lot of photo essays on East LA, but I never saw really insiders photograph it up until now. Well, like, we're discovering in archives and stuff like that. Like, oh, there were these East LA photographers, or there was like this one of my mentors, Joseph Rodriguez. He stood for like 3 years and got intertwined in East LA, like culture and photography, and really did a story that was unique. And I think that's what we should be pushing for, is saying like, I understand your point of view, but now here's mine.
Wow.
And not fighting, but just giving different pieces to the puzzle. And I think that's really needed, because like I said, when I was growing up and I was getting schooled on photography, I didn't feel like I saw myself in my lectures and stuff like that. I just saw what the art world wanted me to see, and I think it's time like to open it up and open the conversation and say, okay, and like, there's these people of color and they have something to say, and they're just articulate as articulate as me, and have as right ownership to the medium. Like, the hope for the future still exists, and not just with my nephew, but with my brother and my family. And I just want to put that out there, like, you know, I don't know who's gonna like watch this and what audience, but like all the horrible hardships you go through, and all the pain you endure, and everything like that leaves really fucked up marks on you. Like, use that. Like, don't let it defeat you, because every moment that really painful shit happens to me, I always think that I'm defeated. But my mom really schooled me on, like, no, it's not over, it ain't over. Like, you have so much more to do, and you have so much more to accomplish. So if you're feeling, like, really down, or if you think your life is really fucked up, I feel you, and don't let that break you. Like, we need so much more artists in the world. We need artists of color. We need artists that really have fucking experienced the world that isn't like sunshine and flowers. And I want to see more people like that out in the world. I want to meet them. I want them to get like art school degrees and all that shit. Like, I don't want to just be me and you. Like, I don't want that to be the art world. Like, I want to see people overcome all their stuff and really apply that to art. And that's what I'm trying to do with my life and my story. And it's not just it's not just like an ego thing. I want to meet other people out there, and that's what I want to say to people. I always say that, like, if I could do it, anybody else could do it.
It's beautiful. And I want to thank you for being part of the Art Spot this week. And just thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you. Shout out to Boyle Heights.
I want to thank our viewers for joining us on this edition of the Art Spot with our special guest, Miss Star Montana. For more of her work, please check out her website at starmontana.net. And on a special note, shout out to Boyle Heights! And I want to personally thank Stephanie Molina for bringing me onto the team and doing the Art Spot. It was a pleasure working with you all. I can't wait to see more. Was that her man?
One of them.
Hot mess? Was it?
Yeah. That was Ramon, biggest thief in the world. Oh, and he was everything in Mexico. So like he was cleaning our yard, and he's like, "You have grass? You don't have grass." He's like, "In Mexico, I was a gardener. I was like, I owned a gardening business, and all of that." And we're like, "Oh yeah." And then he's like, "Oh, your dog looks sick." In Mexico, I was a vet, and like everything, like we're just like fucking liar. Like everywhere he was, anything he needed to talk to you about, he's
Your
like,
president is terrible. In Mexico, I was president.